So welcome. For everyone listening, this is Dr. Matt, who's someone who I don't personally work with, meaning he hasn't, quote unquote, treated me. We've spoken because we've connected on another matter that isn't about me. But I met Dr. Matt in a way that maybe I'll tell you another day. It's something like, it's not a secret, but it's a little kind of private for now. So, but I like Dr. Matt, and you give your resume. Like not long, but just like what's your
Sure, yeah, I'm a
resume?
psychologist. I'm in private practice. I've been in private practice since '99, which is obscene to me. I can't believe how long I've been doing this, but yeah.
And what percentage, what do you mostly work on? It's family psychology?
I work a lot with anxiety and depression, and a lot with families, all aspects of families. So I see a lot of kids. I do a lot of parenting, a lot of emerging young adults. A lot of 20s, the 20-somethings are coming into my practice more than ever before.
And your kids are 20s.
And also couples. Mm-hmm.
And couples. So you have like what percentages kids, what percentages, or kids/adolescents, what percentages couples?
Yeah, whenever you get a child part of my practice, I don't really just treat the child because I got to treat the whole family. I got to treat everybody.
Okay.
Right, so everybody comes in. So I make sure of it. So it ranges. I'm about 50-50 with kids to adults. Okay.
So since I was interviewing Raquel, now Rachel, from Vanderpump Rules, I mentioned it to you and I asked you to watch the reunion of Vanderpump Rules. Mm-hmm. So you watched the 3 parts of the reunion?
I did, yes.
Okay. So to get everyone caught up, because I was trying to get my head straight about what I thought I was seeing, I asked Dr. Matt to watch the reunion because it seemed different than even the Housewives reunions I've seen, where it is a beatdown in many different directions and it is not exactly positive and it's not necessarily feel good. I've felt that it's been a little bit like there's always like a toast at the end and some version of a resolution. And I watched this and it felt to me like a beatdown of a girl that people do not like, made many mistakes. Great. But I just was watching it on its face as a beatdown. My words, she wanted to leave and then she was asked to come back. So I asked Dr. Matt to weigh in. So I then thought he'd be interesting to just have on the show, not just about that, but just about other things going on, whether it's Danny Masterson or cancel culture or Scientology. I wanted to sort of try this out because I think a normal person, a lay person discussing something is different than a professional, a person that is thinking about this kind of stuff all day. And that's an expert. I'm not saying Dr. Matt knows it all, but I'm sure take his opinion and see what you think. So this is Dr. Matt, and I guess we'll start with that. So you watched that reunion, and I had researched and know a bit about emotional abuse personally. And I wanted to know what you thought about that, like at that level. And you said something very interesting, which was that it did not seem like there was any goal or aim for a resolution.
Right. Yeah, it seemed to me it was just a hamster wheel of hate, right? We were never getting off that. And they had a lot to be angry about, not to say that they were, unnecessarily upset or angry, but there was no goal to that. Unless... I've been thinking about that, and I think it's because of the nature of the beast. Maybe the goal is to get ratings, simply that, right? So what are we going to do to get ratings? And maybe, right? So I might be looking at it differently, but I would like to see it as a goal of some kind of conclusion or some kind of satisfaction, feeling better about a horrible event or something that happened to you that was horrible. This reminded me of Roman times sending slaves into the Colosseum to get slaughtered by the lions, and we're in the audience watching. And
by the way, it's so funny because I was talking to someone using the same Gladiator reference. I can't believe you just said that. We've never said that to each other. I thought the same thing. And the funny thing is that you said like maybe it's about ratings, which is so like cute because you don't watch these shows, but the person who is the executive producer of the show said that the show was on the verge of cancellation, possibly being canceled, and that this saved the show, that this scandal saved the show. So it's just funny that you say maybe.
And it's interesting to me too, because there are other shows like Intervention or Hoarders where they're actually working through problems, right? They're working through issues or conflicts. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm going to slaughter you. It doesn't have to be this high amount of conflict. Watching people say things that maybe you always wanted to say to somebody, but didn't either have the guts or didn't want to, have the ramifications of it. So we sort of kind of vicariously enjoy watching someone do that. But I think that there's more to it than that. And I think there's an opportunity there for growth. That I tell my patients a lot. I say, when you're angry at somebody and you have a 5-gallon bucket of shit and you want to throw it on them, there's no way you're not going to get splattered back on yourself. There's just no way. And I don't think I would ever choose to do something that I'm going to get shit on myself for. Right?
Interesting.
I want to avoid that.
Well, and there's two things. One is, I don't blame the players, because I didn't blame Russell Crowe for going into the pit and killing. It was kill or be killed. I don't blame the players. And it's funny because I said something about two women on another show that said to each other, they're going to get this other girl wasted. And then one of their sons forced himself upon her behind a door, and that was aired. And I never have said their names because I'm not really blaming them. When you're in this game, when you're in that Coliseum, and I've been in that Coliseum, I've said things I would never normally say. I've done things that you're in, and I've not liked people that I would normally like, because when you're on the field, it's just a different game there. And it is for ratings, whether it's not like on the forefront. You're not sitting there every second. You just know what the goal is of what you're doing. It's to always say the thing. We hold back in normal life. So I think it's all, what I think is interesting, and everyone's thinking about the people. And yes, we have to think about the production, because the people that are the grown-ups that are responsible and what they're putting out. But if people aren't buying it, then there's nothing to sell. It's supply and demand. So I think we have to look at the viewer that's consuming this as normal, because I said it's almost like the consumer, the viewer thinks of them, they think of it as reality, but they kind of think of them almost as actors. They don't think of it as like real. It's real, but it's not real. So they will allow for something to go down that they would never allow in their own lives if they were standing by. So it's like, I think we're consuming things. And I just think that podcast made a lot of people reach out to me and start thinking. I didn't see it that way. They just were thinking this is an entertainment vehicle, like gladiators ripping each other's arms off. Yeah. But when they really thought this is a daughter, could be a mother one day, a person, a human being at the baseline. Yeah. That was why it was the upside down.
Yeah. And not just the people who were attacked, but I would have preferred to also hear more from the people who were attacking about what exactly got them so upset. Because the cheating, it seems like it's in a lot of their lives. It's in the past, in the histories of the show.
Yes.
It was, and maybe it was more personal, but why was it personal, and how was it personal, and how did it affect them, and how were they afraid that it was going to affect them going forward? Right. So that, I think, is so important, especially with healthy conflict resolution, because we don't have healthy conflict resolution right now. A lot. It doesn't get demonstrated too often. Many battles are fought for us instead of talking about it. People pull up their tent stakes and leave instead of managing and dealing with, hey, this has hurt me, or this upset me, or this hurt me, upset me. But instead of saying it hurt me, upset me, I'm going to attack you, and I'm going to make you hurt and make you feel the way I feel.
But you would need a moderator to do. You would have needed the host to facilitate that.
Need somebody because when you're emotional, you're obviously not thinking that. When you're emotional, I'm going to hurt. I'm hurt. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to make it fair, and I'm going to beat you. I'm going to win. So yeah, absolutely, a moderator would be important. Someone who would be important to direct that. Yeah. So it's more healthy. So it's an opportunity. This way, look, I'm result based, right? So I want people to leave that situation feeling a little bit better, feeling a little bit like, I've grown a little bit from this situation. This is a challenge and I've grown from it. I can't imagine anybody who was launching all those attacks felt better afterwards, tired, exhausted, but I don't know if they felt actually better about anything. Yeah,
and it's funny because there's a guy in this, Tom, who's the villain also, and I had a guy, a person yesterday I had a person on this podcast who was on a show with Tom as a roommate. And he said, it was this like sort of competition space, this like boot campy type of army military thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, Tyler, said that Tom was a good guy, that he was loyal, that you could tell in these games that like he's the type who really went for you and he got other people's backs. And like he too is a gladiator in the middle of it. Now, I know he's in a relationship, and I'll get into that with you. He's in a relationship with someone that he's lived with for 10 years, and now they've gone through this and they're still living together, which I really question, because I can't imagine anyone who would live with someone that they didn't have to live with. And I mean, children, the abandonment issue where like it's called abandonment in the courts,
Right.
or some very serious dire reason. And I think that the reason they are living together, and I think that the reason he is also the villain in this manner, is because you do different things on these television shows than you would in your normal life. As I'm saying, everybody does. And that show's based on alcohol and affairs. So this guy said he's a human being, and he said it really bothers me because he had an affair. He cheated. Now, by the way, he's not married. He doesn't have kids. I'm not saying it's not bad, but I don't think it's as bad as being married with kids. That's just my opinion.
Right.
And so this guy, Tyler, was saying, because of cancel culture, like this guy's getting so abused, and other people that talk to him are getting abused. And Rachel had said to me that people that follow her or comment on something get abused. Like we're really in this abusive culture. And he said, people have affairs, people do bad things, but this, he has to live on a national stage. Same with Rachel. Like they have to live it on everyone has to weigh in their opinion. And it's online bullying, like abusing these people. So where's the line, and why is that okay? Yeah, he cheated. It's bad.
Right. And maybe because he's a public figure of sorts, so it gives people access to him where they can do that, for sure. And I think that we have that feeling where we could, they open up themselves to us. So I'm going to share my opinion, and I'm going to share how I feel. And isn't that symbiotic? Don't they work that as well? If he doesn't have an audience, then he becomes irrelevant.
Right. It's the rose with the petal and the thorns.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't, like, you walked in to be famous, but like, I don't know where the line is. I mean, I take a lot of shit and get beaten up pretty good too.
It's funny because I've been reading some of the comments that people have written after your podcast.
Yeah.
I was trying to do a little, due diligence before I come on here.
Yeah.
And one thing I have to say, you definitely get people talking, right? I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, good, bad, angry, happy, hate, love. You definitely get people talking. And the interesting thing, and I talk about this a lot in my practice. And I ask everybody, what's the opposite of hate? Or what's opposite, and they all say love. And love and hate are opposites. And they're really not. They're very closely related. They're very strong emotions. You don't love a little, you love, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't hate a little, you hate. They're like very close, right? So the opposite of that is apathy. It's just not caring.
Like indifference.
And, I think when you're in the public eye, that's the worst. Indifference, irrelevance is the worst, right? So it kind of works like, are these people in the reality, are they really saying what they're really feeling? Are they playing that game, as you say?
Wait, you mean that indifference, meaning that the people don't give a shit about you? Like the fact that I get people heated, hating me or loving me is being successful and being a public person. If they didn't give a shit at all, yes. But the public person needs to be indifferent and have apathy. Needs to I was talking to this guy, Tyler Cameron. He's a guy who is from The Bachelorette. He's become very successful. He's beloved. He hates the social media aspect. He said he got anxiety for the first time ever. Because of reading comments and things like that.
Right.
And I would say that people always ask me, and I think it has to do with my childhood and seeing a lot of abuse. I get a little anxiety when something's going sideways for me, because it does happen, because I do have an opinion. I'm not one of these people just posting about flowers and jelly beans and rainbows. But when that happens, I grab that wheel, and I don't hold too tight and I don't hold too loose. I just I'm like, all right, we got something. Let's fucking deal with this. So I'm not or even though that when the Rachel thing, because I took on a lot of hate, and her own, team said to me, we appreciate we saw you took a lot of heat. They took a lot of heat, but also 100% of people hated her. Now 50% of people hate her, maybe even though. So they're happy. Maybe even fewer. I actually don't even think it's 50%. It's maybe 30% or something, 20. But it helped her. It gave her something to go, somewhere to go and evolve into a new conversation. For she was sort of stuck in like being in this mental, facility. But they said you took on a lot of heat, which I did. But like when I get slapped in those comments, it's like a tennis ball. I serve it. Hit it.
No, which is healthy, which is good. I like to think that I equate things with, I love to eat. I'm a big eater, right? So I love chocolate. I can have chocolate all the time. There are people in the world who I've met who actually don't like chocolate, which I don't get. I don't understand.
Same.
Yeah. Although those are the people I want to go out for dessert with, because then they're not going to take mine and we're good. Yes. Right. So.
No, because they're going to order some apple dessert, and that's more annoying because you don't get to taste that.
And that's theirs. It's fine. It's all theirs.
Oh, no, you don't share. So we should put you in therapy. Wow.
Share. Right. It's my time to be selfish when I'm having dessert, especially when it comes to chocolate. Right. So as good as chocolate is, and as wonderful as chocolate is, even chocolate is not universally loved. Right. And even as wonderful as you are and wonderful as I am, well, how can I be so narcissistic to think that I'm as good as chocolate? So I'm not going to be universally loved, and we have to be okay with that. Right?
Yes,
that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's excellent. It's a great, because chocolate's pretty fucking fabulous. So that's a great. That's a good one. But I like dark chocolate.
As I've gotten older, dark chocolate is.
Oh my God! Yeah, I like. 100%. Let's go all the way. Do it. Hit me.
100%.
So, have you been watching the Danny Masterson stuff?
I've caught it a little bit here and there. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Have you
watched. Oh. I was really enthralled with the Leah Remini series.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. What a crusader! How brave.
Amazing. I agree. That's ballsy to talk about it. And I know her. I met her when we were both PAs on Saved by the Bell. When I was a PA on Saved by the Bell and she was a guest actress. Mm-hmm. And I met her and she was very cool. And she was in some shitty car. And I remember thinking she was rich because she was on 1 week. She was an actress, like going on television on a show. And she said, if eating tacos out of the back of my car is rich, then I'm rich. And I've always liked her. I've always respected her. And a lot of people are saying she should come on here because I've been referencing her, and I know her. We respect each other. Maybe you'll come on for a little bit of it if she comes on, because I didn't know you were such a fan. Yeah, she's really amazing. She's very real, and she said it. Once you say something, it's amazing. Like, you then have the freedom. You've ripped the Band-Aid off, and now she's like, fire hydrant just coming out. Mm-hmm. But this Danny Masterson thing. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you deal with victims of sexual abuse?
I have, yes.
Okay, so it was a very interesting ride I took with this thing, because a lot of things I learn about from social media, it's like a snippet. It's not something that was on my radar. Okay, so I think that in the past I had heard that this guy from That 70s Show had violated women or was accused of it, but it wasn't a story I was following. I don't think the women had names, or it just was something in the background. So all of a sudden last week it becomes that this guy is convicted, and literally, I didn't remember when I had first read it, and I did not know this happened 20 years ago. Right. But maybe, so there's a separate conversation about these women and having to endure this road of 20 years of torture in their minds. And like, it's this guy's running around and he's at Starbucks and he's living a life and he's acting on a show with Ashton Kutcher and all this stuff, The Ranch and all this stuff. But like, when I first heard that Ashton and Mila, who by the way made this thing much bigger, people are saying it's great almost what they did, because it made this such a topic of awareness. So even though people are very mad at them, they brought awareness to something that people would have talked about for 2 days and then stopped. Right. So when I thought about the mother contacting people that knew him to reduce a sentence, in and of itself, it made sense to me. Like, the concept made sense. I didn't read the stories about the girls. It wasn't human to me or personal. It just was like, and everybody went crazy. And then I started doing a deeper look at it. And Christina Ricci came out and said, we all know these guys that seem like awesome guys to us that do shitty things to other people. That doesn't mean that they're good people because they've been nice to us. And there's so many of those guys in Hollywood that I've met, like all the Me Too guys I've met, really all of them. And then I was watching other videos of people saying how the percentage of convictions that actually happen, and how small that is, and then how small the percentage of people that actually report it because they don't think, and all these things that we all already know. They're going to be doubted, and then it's the burden on the person to prove it. And so I did a full rotation to be like, I fully get why everyone was so enraged, because it's sort of belittling something that's so hard to get done, that these women fought for 20 years to get done. So I just kind of wanted to talk to you about that whole thing.
Sure. The damage that gets done to victims is tremendous. It's tremendous. And it's not just physical, it's the emotional damage, are wounds that really don't go away. They change, they grow, but the damage is tremendous because it becomes such a personal thing for them that they blame themselves, right? Or they find how could this have been different? What could I have done differently? They try to rewrite it. We all do that when bad things happen to us. We say to us, how could I have avoided it? What could I have done differently? And to make matters worse, they're told things many times. And I can't say what has happened in these cases, but many times they're told, think you deserve this, you wanted this. Their bodies could have, betrayed them and reacted in certain ways that think they want it, even though they don't. Right. So it's very confusing for victims of this, because, if I didn't want this, why did my body react to it? Or why did I wear what I wore? Or, they said that they look at me in a certain way, and which is sometimes okay, but not when it goes over the edge. Right?
You mean before the line? We're partying, we're drinking, we're having fun. I was wearing a sexy top, and then it turned, and there's a line.
Before, during, after. Doesn't matter, right? It's just, and then
why didn't I freak out and call the cops the minute after? Like whatever.
Absolutely. And maybe it didn't happen that way. And look, our brain does some fascinating things when we're faced with trauma. Shuts off, right? Because doesn't necessarily want to see it or react to it that way, right? We want to shut it down. So when we shut it down, there are gaps in our memory. There are gaps in what's going to happen, and then we fill it in with what we think would have been. But that's just conjecture. So then it's like, well, maybe I didn't fight him, or maybe I didn't, say no, and maybe it was very clear. And there's a responsibility that I think we all have in relationships to make sure that, that we're healthy and we're in a good place and we're interested in what's happening, and we want that. But I think what happens after sometimes is this lack of support that people feel, or that they imagine will happen, so they don't share it, and they don't want anyone to know, so they don't tell anybody, because they're afraid that people are going to say, well, you deserved it, or why did you wear that, or why did you go to his house alone? Why did you go to a hotel room alone? Right? Or why did you leave your drink unattended? Don't you know we told you never to leave your drink unattended?
Right.
My girls went off to college. I taught them, this is how you hold your drink. Right? Not like this, like this. And if someone makes a mistake, someone does this, then I messed up because I held my drink wrong. And so there's this lack of support for themselves that they give, and then they project that to other people, thinking that they're not going to support them either. It's damaging. That abuse happens longer, right? The effects have it. It's a ripple effect, right? It happens so much longer and afterwards. So it's so hard for people to come forward.
Well, also for you to have to deal with proving it. Go back and find all the email. What happened there and what time and the detail. Like it's dumped on the person that it happened to, because they have to figure it out. And I had experience with a situation where I had to be a lawyer with multiple books and multiple, and the burden is on you. But what you were saying is interesting. There's something that happens with people. Well, two things. One, there's like a reflex that you have about the way that you feel about yourself that's not normal, and you intellectually know that it's not right. Like, let's say for years someone told you were disgusting or something about you, or you left the house for 15 minutes, so you're a bad parent or something. Like, even though it's ridiculous that but if someone tells you or does something to you long enough, you have a reflex that thinks that that's real. And it takes a long time to shake that off. It's not something you can just have even a professional say to you that's not correct. And you're just going to be like, oh, okay, now I think differently. It's like Pavlovian.
Yeah, well, we have a confirmation bias, right? So, confirmation bias is super interesting. And it's pretty hard to get out of. So the confirmation bias is if I have a feeling about who I am, if I have an idea about anything, and we can see that with our political system right now, how separated our political system is. So if I have a feeling about anything about who I am, I only look at information that's going to confirm that. And I'm going to ignore any information that might refute it. And so that can go either way. So if I feel like I'm a piece of shit, I'm going to find things, I'm going to see things, my eyes will be wide open for evidence to support that I'm not good.
Like a horoscope.
Right.
Like a horoscope. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I got a speeding ticket, I'm not a good person. Or I came late, I'm not a good person. Or whatever it is. Or I left my kid home for 15 minutes, I'm not a good person. And all these different things they build up. And the fact that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that is good, and I'm taking care of these people that are good, fly out the window, they don't matter. Because it doesn't conform to this confirmation bias that I have, this bias that I have that I'm not good.
Well, I also thought about this thing being the victim of any type of abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, any kind of abuse, that people don't always want to say something because of how it affects other people around them. How is it affecting your job and what they think of you? How is it affecting if you have a kid who's in school? How you like in any situation in a family dynamic? I don't think that's discussed enough. It's like, why didn't you say something? Or you should have used your voice, or this person finally opened up. And some people hold things in, like some people are physically abused, but they don't want to embarrass their kid and say it because the kid will then know that one parent, or emotionally abuse it because of the kid. And while it's great to protect kids, it's hard to know what line to follow. Are you going to open your mouth because you also can help other people? Or are you going to put one child and what they might think over all the other people? There are a lot of things to navigate. And just even with these girls with the Danny Masterson thing, because they were affecting their parents and the religion, their parents. In this situation, the girl is estranged now from her mother because her mother's in Scientology, and you're trained that you're not to report.
Yeah. And from what I understand also, Scientology doesn't believe in psychology. So you couldn't go for mental health assistance either.
Oh, wow. Is that true? Wow.
I believe so. That kind of stuck out on me. It's like, oh, well, I guess I'm not included. I'm not invited. But
wow. So it was a very, very eye-opening thing. And also what it would feel like for 20 years for the girls. Like I said, the guy was walking free. Like I said, he's going to Starbucks, ordering a latte, living a life. He has a wife, he has kids. He's just living a life. I'm sure it wasn't as easy since he was accused, but a lot of people, you're a free person.
It's even more than that for them, I would think, because people who are traumatized and they have abusers, they see them in the corner of their eye, in the shadows all the time, right? They see them constantly. When they're not there, they see them, they feel it.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what that must have been like for these women to not only have that, but also this tremendously large and powerful, wealthy organization behind him.
Jesus. Yeah.
Are they following me too? Are they, now who's that? And who's...
Oh, wow. Now you're wrong. Right. Wow.
Who's parked in front of my house?
By the way, they could still be thinking that now.
They absolutely could still be thinking that now. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of times this type of abuse, the sexual abuse, assault, it's not a one-time thing. Even if it is a one-time, it continues. And that's what makes this so damaging and so difficult to manage and to grow from. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that crosses gender. It's not just, men have been sexually assaulted also. Right. And it follows them as well. It's difficult for them as well. Right. So it's not, we don't hear so much about it.
That's even worse because that's even more secretive. That's got to be worse.
I mean, just because you don't hear about something doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, exactly. Right? That's got to be, because that's a different level of shame. It's not as common. So it's a different level of shame. Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah. And I would imagine that they feel some level of vindication, validation. And people always say if you're holding on to anger is like drinking poison, hope the other person dies. I think in situations it is, but I think in those situations there's a comfort to it. I think when you're like, that ultimately that person got what they deserve, and like you kind of live in that. I don't know. What about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's hard to say, and hard to say what's healthy or what's not. I guess the proof will be in the pudding for them, and that's probably a very personal thing. When you said that, I thought back. I once saw an interview of a Holocaust survivor. And it was this, obviously she was an older woman and she had suffered immensely in the concentration camp that she's 5. And she said, if I had the opportunity to talk to the commandant, I would forgive him. I would forgive him. Because I don't want to hold on to that hate. If I hold on to that hate, it's going to keep me there, and it's going to keep me miserable and angry and upset and sad and all these things. And I just want to forgive so I can move on. And God, listen, God bless. I if you're asking if I could do something like that,
no. And
first of all, I hope I never have.
Yeah, and I think there are levels. Like active mean hate is different than like smug, like reveling in the fact that someone got what they fucking deserve. Because I would be like that if I were those girls, and I would be like that forever, and there'd be no amount. Yeah. But I wouldn't be like every day thinking of that. But that's how I feel. That's why I was so wrong to even entertain that letter and what Mila and Ashton did, because I then put myself in the position, and I'd want him to get the worst possible treatment in jail, and I wouldn't want him to die because it wouldn't be enough suffering. Right. So maybe that woman is way more evolved than I am, but I wouldn't see that changing.
I think she's way more involved than most of us. I think with that, hey, listen, we're never too late for us to evolve and to grow, right, and to improve. Yep. And I think that's the ultimate thing is apathy. Is that, you know what, you're not part of my life anymore. You can't hurt me anymore. You're not important to me anymore.
Yeah,
that's right, and that's something to aspire to, right? That's hard. That's hard to do. Hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a whole thing though too with like, it happens in obviously hedge funds and lawyers and every industry. It happens in industry. I've seen it firsthand with entertainment. People really feel that they're untouchable. Mm-hmm. And the power and the money and the smugness and the Harvey Weinstein types and all of those guys that, I've been to a dinner with Harvey Weinstein where he's bragging about how he, Michelle and Barack Obama used to call him at night and have him come to send over a movie for them to screen late night at the White House. And he's like, and Leo, who was sitting right there, and Leo, and he and I, when we did this movie and we won the award, and J-Lo, mm-hmm. and he loved it all. Like, name dropping and Gwyneth and this one, and like he thought he was so hot shit. Right. Well, how much do you talk about cancel culture? It's not really in your business. You're not really talking to entertainers.
There is definitely that conflict that we're in, right? We're supposed to be so open and free and be you and body positivity and all that, but yet there's a whole clash of other things. And I think that we are going through as a society, as a people, we're kind of going through this growing pains of who we want to be and how we want to be, or how accepting do we want to be, really? And there's that push pull. It's hard. It's definitely hard, and it's so sad. I heard something on the media the other day that family members aren't talking to each other because of politics, right? Because of politics. Yeah. And how awful is that? That you lose a family member because you don't agree politically with their guy. I think that so much of it, if we look at why now, right? Why is it now? Why is it not before? Because I think we've gone through things like this before, but it does feel different now. It feels more severe. You say you are what you eat, right? If you eat healthy, you're going to be healthy. Well, I think that we have to be very careful what we digest in media, what news we're digesting in this 24 news cycle. But no one
does that. Everyone says that. That's what I'm saying about reality TV. You're fighting the ocean. No one's going to do that.
That's the problem, right? Because then we just listen to these talking heads that feed us information, and we don't really think critically about it.
Yeah, but first of all, it used to be that journalists had to have multiple sources that were verified.
Right.
Now anybody can just say a source said. If you're reading Vanity Fair or like People Magazine or the New York Times, they have to have legitimate sources. They have a legal department. I don't know why it differs and why everybody doesn't have to have that. But if you're reading other magazines or blogs, there's no, a source said.
Right.
You could be the source. I could be, like, anybody could be. So a source said, who's usually their publicist, their sister, their mother, their brother, their publicist,
right.
their agent.
Or what's the famous line? What's the famous preamble to any? A lot of people are saying.
Oh,
right?
they say. Well, no, but TikTok. Now what's going on is TikTok and Instagram. They're journalists. These are citizens journalists. These are people. And a lot of them are smart and a lot of them do their research and know what they're talking about, but a lot of them don't. So people are just sitting here and they're reporters. They become reporters. Like they have 1 million followers. They're reporting on different types of news, entertainment, politics, cars, watches, whatever. But they're people. I listen to what some of them say. It's insane. Yeah. So I guess you're right. It's the same thing with knowing who to trust. I don't listen to any of them. But
there's no nutrition label on things that we read. Right?
Well, no. And also it's confirmation bias. You're listening to people that say things you want to hear. Back to your point.
Absolutely. And that's all I'm listening to.
Well, that's why when we were growing up, not to be like back in my day, when we were growing up, the news wasn't what it is now, where you'll have like a person on CNN and be like, like about Trump, or over on Fox News, they're like chuckling, you know, like how Megyn Kelly was like, that moron, you know, like it wasn't like that when we were growing up. It was more, you know, moderate. It wasn't like, it's just you turn on to Fox if you want people to bash everybody on CNN or Biden and just make fun of him. And you turn on to CNN to see people make fun of Trump. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. And it's not just us anymore. Because we're, you know, the other foreign nationals were getting involved, right? And social media is so interesting. Who's real, who's not, what are bots, what aren't, right? So where are we getting our information and getting your information from? I have had conversations with people, and sometimes I'll engage with my patients, and you know, and I do it with playful banter. I try to as much as I possibly can, and I'm a big teaser, so I'll tease them about it, but. When I hear them say certain things where they'll quote somebody, I'll say, that's really interesting. Where'd you get that? Let's go to that quote. Let's find that quote. Let's look for that study that they quoted. Let's find the study. Let's read the study. I'll read it with you.
Well, I think
that quote is from. And a lot of times the quote is from the hypothesis of the study. It's not the result of the study. And you can say anything you want in a hypothesis because it's a question.
Well, when we were growing up, I think that things like college, the concept of going to college and the purity of that process seemed legitimate. And so the concept of politics seemed not fair. It was always like mudslinging, but you kind of thought there were two candidates. You could really get an understanding from the 3 channels on television of who they were. And it wasn't like a lot of propaganda and marketing. And the reason I say both of those areas is because drugs, big pharma, all of it. But like with college, the colleges that when I was in college were for morons. I mean, they were known that you would have to just sign your name on the SAT and you could get in, are now good schools. I don't think that the education is that different. I think it's the money and the marketing. So what I'm saying is like you're voting, but you're voting based on marketing campaigns, because the more things you've heard about something, it's just like a commercial. So it's like, why are you buying the Hermes bag over the Chanel bag? Because of the marketing campaign. Like it's not because of the actual construction of the leather. So I think it's scary because people don't realize that it's not that easy to really get good information because it's marketing. Marketing is massive. Everything is marketing.
Absolutely. And I'm proud to say, since I'm a girl dad, I know those 2 bags.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, good. Your wife would want you to know too. So what do you think about people who are going through a nasty breakup or infidelity or something really toxic, living under the same roof? In what circumstances would that be a good idea?
Would it be a good idea?
Yeah.
Not too many. I hope it's a big roof.
A big what?
A roof, big roof.
Oh, a big yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. You know, it's interesting because I have been involved with high conflict families.
Yes.
And you see this dynamic that occurs where they It may be both, maybe one party. It may not be both, but they don't want to let go. They don't want to let go. Remember what I said, the opposite of love isn't hate, right? They want to be relevant and they want to stay in that person's life. So if I can't get you to love me, I'll get you to hate me because I'm still getting you.
You're still in the game, still on the ride.
Still in it. I'm still in it. And you're still in it with me. And that's really difficult to break out. You know, when you define yourself as part of that relationship and really in that relationship, and you never want to leave it. And even when you hate that person, you don't want to leave it because they're part of your life and you don't want to give that up. Now, that happens with kids, without kids, with business, without business, with finances, with finances involved or not. It's very hard people to give that up. They don't want to mourn that loss for whatever reason. And we could definitely talk about that more because that's a lot. That's a big. That's a lot. Much
yeah, topic. No. Because for me, I feel like if you genuinely, if it's really emotionally unhealthy for you, and there's been something really toxic, my experience is that the only reason that someone would stay would be for financial reasons. They can't afford to leave, or that there's that abandonment issue where the courts will say that one party abandoned by leaving the house. Because
and I'm not discounting that, for sure, right? Absolutely. But sometimes psychologically, there are other things involved. And that person wouldn't even be involved. They wouldn't even be aware of that.
That's what I was going to say. It's underlying.
Yeah. No, it's totally on the line. But I'd love to talk more about that in the future. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's divorce stuff. I've dabbled in talking about doing a divorce show. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we could talk about that more, like different divorce topics. Thank you, Matt. Great talking to you. You did great.
Oh, thank you. You
did great. Really good conversation.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Take care.
Dr. Matt was great. I really, I think it's a dangerous game for people like me to just opine. If I have influence and if people are going to think what I'm saying is true. And I know people will argue with me, and I'm not saying he knows everything, but he's a trained professional on a lot of the matters in life and popular culture that we talk about. So I think it's good to weigh in with someone about some of the things that I've talked about with you and just check in. It's good. You hear your own voice. The voice is inside your own head. That's a very dangerous game. So and when we talk about things that are in popular culture, it's not like to gossip. It's what does it mean? Meaning the Ashton Kutcher and Mila thing made me learn something. Maybe the Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas divorce made me learn something. Maybe the way Meghan and Harry act in their lives make me learn something. The Kardashian, so it's good to use these popular culture things that we all know about and think we have knowledge about to learn. So I think that's, the Vanderpump of it all of it. So I thought he was great.